What happens when the people in power don't just break the rules, but don't even bother denying it? Because that's exactly what's unfolding right now, and trust me, this story only gets more shocking the deeper you go. Some major breaking news has just dropped regarding the Epstein Files, and it's not looking good for the White House, or Acting Attorney General Todd Blanch. In fact, this could be one of the most explosive legal and political developments we've seen in months. So let me ask you this, what does it mean when the top law enforcement official in the United States is accused of violating the law, and doesn't even show up to defend himself? Today, a federal judge, U.S. District Judge Emmett Sullivan, issued a ruling that is sending shockwaves across Washington. According to the judge, Todd Blanch effectively admitted to violating the law regarding the handling of the Epstein Files. And no, that's not speculation. That's not interpretation. That's coming directly from the judge's own words. The Attorney General does not respond substantively to any of these arguments. The Attorney General has conceded that he is in violation of the Act. Now listen carefully to this, because the wording matters. The judge didn't say there might be a violation. He didn't say evidence suggests wrongdoing. He said the Attorney General essentially conceded the violation, by not even attempting to argue against it. No response. No defense. No pushback. Nothing. Think about that for a second. If you were accused of something this serious, wouldn't you fight back? Wouldn't you show up? Or is silence sometimes an admission? Here's where things start to connect, and where the timeline becomes critical. Back in November 2025, Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act in a near-unanimous vote, 427-1. That's not politics as usual. That's overwhelming agreement. Even Donald Trump himself signed this law. The requirement? Simple, the Department of Justice had to release all unclassified Epstein-related files, along with a detailed redaction log, by December 19, 2025. So what happened? They missed the deadline. Not only that, when documents were eventually released, they came out in waves, heavily redacted. We are talking about hundreds of pages that were completely blacked out. Entire sections erased. And then, unbelievably, in January, the DOJ claimed they had fulfilled their legal obligation. Let me ask you, how do you fulfill transparency, with black ink covering everything? That claim didn't sit well, not with the public, and definitely not with members of Congress. Some lawmakers who reviewed the materials suggested something even bigger. The full Epstein files could contain over 6 million pages. But the DOJ? They released only about 3 million. So where is the rest? That question led to legal action. In April, independent journalist Katie Phang filed a lawsuit against the DOJ, accusing the administration of blatantly violating the law. And her allegations are serious. She claims the DOJ improperly redacted key information, including names of co-defendants in a draft indictment, potential co-conspirators, and even FBI interview notes from a woman who alleged that Epstein introduced her to Donald Trump in the 1980s when she was just 13 years old, and that she was assaulted. That's not just a legal issue. That's explosive. And now, Judge Sullivan has sided with Phang. The court has given Todd Blanch until July 2, just days away, to either release the withheld information or provide a detailed, line-by-line justification for every single redaction. And according to Phang's attorney, the government ignored its own law and blew off a judge's order, all for the sake of protecting the very powerful and very rich. Doing so has consequences, and now the public will finally get transparency around Jeffrey Epstein and his network. Let that sink in. This isn't just about missing paperwork. This is about accountability at the highest level of government. Phang herself also spoke out following the ruling.
Katie Phang, private citizen, have standing to be able to get Todd Blanch as the acting attorney general of the Department of Justice to be able to comply with Judge Sullivan's order, which is now telling him that on or before July 2nd, he either has to put up or shut up. He either has to bring forth unredacted files or show cause as to why he should not or cannot do so. But I have identified, Ben, specific areas in the Epstein files. Number one, redactions that have been made to senders and recipients, names and email addresses for some of the most egregious email communications with Jeffrey Epstein, talking about little girls being naughty, things like that. Judge Sullivan says those identities have to be disclosed. Number two, the FBI interview notes for the victim who was alleged that when she was 13 years old, she was physically and sexually abused by Donald Trump. Judge Sullivan has said that Todd Blanch must produce those or show cause as to why that he should not have to do so. The foreign language documents in the Epstein Files Act that the Department of Justice didn't bother to do interpretations or translations of. Judge Sullivan said you have to produce those. The names in two internal DOJ documents that identified the co-conspirators / co-defendants that were going to be a part of that proposed indictment in the Southern District of Florida that never materialized because it was never produced or presented to the grand jury. Instead, Epstein got his sweetheart plea deal with the state authorities. Judge Sullivan says that those identities of those co-conspirators and co-defendants must be revealed. And lastly, there was the redaction log that the Epstein Files Transparency Act required the DOJ to produce contemporaneously with the rollout of these files. It was supposed to identify the grounds underneath this law as to why they were withholding or redacting certain bits of information. The DOJ wiped his ass with it, Ben, and did not produce that at all. Judge Sullivan said, you better do it and start it now. If not, there's going to be consequences. I mean, this is a big deal, Ben. This judge says I have informational harm and economic harm. But you know what the best part about this order is? It says that Blanch must produce, quote, to the public, not to just Ms. Fang, but to the public. And this is why I brought this lawsuit in the beginning. We needed this transparency as the American public, and we had to force the DOJ to have to do this.
But here's where things take an even more bizarre turn. The DOJ responded to the ruling by calling the judge's decision a perverse interpretation of the law. And they claimed Blanch has not conceded anything. Really? Because not showing up to defend yourself, in court, is about as close as it gets to conceding. It's like saying you didn't lose a game, because you never showed up to play. That's not how it works. And this isn't an isolated incident. Todd Blanch has been under increasing scrutiny, with critics accusing him of facilitating a broader cover-up. Just weeks ago, during testimony before Congress, he refused to even acknowledge that additional Epstein-related documents exist. Think about that. Not we can't release them. Not they are classified. Just they don't exist.
And will you comply with the law and release all of the files?
As I said to you when we spoke before, we have complied with the law. We have
There are 3 million more documents, and you know what you said to me? They're all duplicative, and they include another guy named Epstein.
No, I didn't
Nobody's
say
buying.
that.
That's
I did
what
not
you said.
say that.
That's what you said.
So look,
reclaiming my
can
time.
I answer? Can I answer the question?
You may not. I just gave you the answer you gave me.
Telling.
No, actually, it's my time, Mr. Chairman. I think those are the rules of this committee. I told him the answer he gave me, and now in public he's trying to say something else. Please stop the clock. Can I get that time back? May I have 20 seconds back, Mr. Chairman? Thank you. I very much appreciate that. Mr. Blanch.
You don't want me to answer the question.
Mr. Blanch, as you know, I visited DOJ 3 times for as much as 10 hours, and I'll be going back. Does the Epstein Files Transparency Act say that the files should be available to members of Congress with a minder at DOJ, where you're in a secure room, you can't write on any of the binders, you can take your own notes? Is that what the Transparency Act says?
It doesn't require we allow you to come to DOJ at all. We did that on our own.
What does it say in terms of transparency? It says that they should be made publicly available.
And they were.
Am I correct?
And
publicly
they were.
available.
And they were.
Oh, well, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Time of the gentlelady has expired.
I beg your pardon.
2 minutes and 10 seconds.
And I'd actually like to get 20 seconds back. How do I get cut off 2 minutes into this?
2 minutes and 10 seconds.
Time of the gentlelady has expired.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's not right.
What rules are we operating under? Because he's under a little bit of heat for not prosecuting anyone in these monstrous crimes? I've been in the room. I have been there. This is what I had to do, to transcribe, to show what is true. What is true is that the president has lied about being on Epstein's plane, and the unredacted files prove that. There's a lot in here. I am shocked at this. There's also this set of files in the file. This is investigation into the potential co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein. I almost used up all the blank ink in the hallway because it's all covered up. It's all covered up. The American people are not stupid. They know that when members of Congress have to go in and actually unredact to try to find the truth for these victims, something is corrupt. Something is corrosive.
So now the question becomes, is this incompetence, or something more deliberate? Because when multiple officials start telling the same story, despite evidence to the contrary, people start asking questions. And not just any questions, the kind that don't go away. You might have also noticed something else. This isn't happening in isolation. During that same hearing, Representative Madeleine Dean began pressing Blanch on these issues, only to be cut off just minutes in by House Appropriations Subcommittee Chair Hal Rogers. Cut off mid-question. Why? What was so important that it couldn't be answered? Or maybe the better question is, what didn't they want answered? This is where the story expands beyond one individual and starts pointing toward a broader pattern. Because when multiple people, across different levels of government, act in ways that limit transparency, it raises serious concerns. And here's the part that many people are struggling to reconcile. For years, Epstein-related revelations have been used as a political talking point, something to rally voters, to demand justice, to promise accountability.
Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism, is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
You wondering why we're not hearing more about this Epstein case? I mean, the guy was only connected to just about every major player in the swamp internationally, and yet you don't hear much about it. And what the hell are they hiding with Jeffrey Epstein?
Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein.
You raised the question of Jeffrey Epstein in your remarks about in the Q&A.
Well, I think he's got a problem. I mean,
what do you think the problem will be?
I don't know, but that island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew. He'll tell you about it. The island was an absolute cesspool.
But now, the same voices that once demanded answers seem to be avoiding them. If the goal was always justice, then why not release everything? Why not provide full transparency? Why not let the facts speak for themselves? Instead, what we are seeing are delays, redactions, denials, and now, a federal judge stepping in. July 2nd is now the key date. That's the deadline. And what happens next could change everything. Will the DOJ comply and release the information? Or will they attempt to justify every redaction, one by one? And if they can't, what does that mean? For the administration. For accountability. For public trust. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about documents. It's about whether the system works, or protects itself. So here's the real question for you: what do you think is being hidden? And why? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your take on this. If you found this breakdown helpful, and want more deep dives into major political stories, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Because we will be watching closely. July 2nd is coming. And when it hits, you're going to want to know the truth.